So this helps you possibly understand how a startup or how a client or how a new age company, even Geo for that matter, when they raise money from Facebook, it's very different than they raise money from, let's say, some Saudi fund for the refinery, etc. Because Facebook evaluates the company very differently. So they cannot go with the same kind of a presentation deck or a business plan. So there are new avenues which are getting built into the business plans now, which we're going to touch upon today. What I'll also tell you what I'm not going to give you or we're not going to share about, and which possibly you can find once you at least some of these becomes a point of view to kind of Google yourself, is what are the templates, are there any kind of Excel sheets which I can use and tools. There are hundreds of tools out there. But I'm just going to touch upon what is changing and how you have to look at what are the new lenses in which the business plan can be looked at. What are important things because we are trying to digitize few things. Are there any digital levers for you? How new companies are trying to look at growth, right? It's because possibly most of the companies, what we have seen last 50, 70 years in India, they are growth led by their bottom lines or the books. But today, we are looking at growth by investing third-party monies into the businesses or acquiring certain companies or alliance-led growth, etc. So the business plan, if I look at maybe a 10-year back, 15-year back companies, even for a large retail companies or today, they look very different. The number of, not just number of heads, but the possible set of heads in the business plans are very different. And that's something we're going to touch upon. As I said, I'm not going to give you templates or any kind of rule books because everybody will follow different templates, and each business to some extent also follow different template. Not just that, if I'm a business, I'm raising money for my same business. If I'm going to a investor who is a Facebook, my business plan to him, what it might excite Facebook in my case might be data. Whereas if I take it to somebody, let's say within India, I might have talked about bottom lines of the and collection capabilities, etc. So I change my business plan differently for different set of clients, or even when I'm trying to hire someone and I have to tell him that this is what I'm building, I'm an early stage idea, how my business plan comes into picture from hiring all the way to raising monies, or even from an exit perspective. So we'll touch upon some of these things. So today's topic is basically there are 3 or 4 buckets which I'm going to touch upon, right? So one is a transformation. So which I just kind of touched upon. What is transforming from a business plan perspective, what you would have seen before to the new world. Second is ideas itself. This, I would say right now is, if you actually maybe, if you are from HSR, you will possibly be hitting many companies coming with some random ideas, and you will say that this doesn't give me bottom line for next 3 years, there is no profit, etc. But maybe, and after a few days, you'll find out somebody has invested in that company. So somebody still believed in that idea and they invested. So some business plan is making sense there. So what is the change of dynamics in ideas itself? Whatever you have seen as ideas coming from the maybe your clients or new companies which are coming to you for formation or basic guidances. And then the final thing is the business plan itself, right? If you understand, let's say, what is transforming, what are the kind of set of ideas, what is changing in the business plans. So the 3 possible buckets we're going to look at. I'll give you some anecdotes so that you can connect what I'm saying with the stories itself. And say, you know what, hey, I'm a great founder, I have blah, blah, blah degree, I am from IIM, blah, 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 great capability, I've worked in industry for 20 years, or 5 years, 10 years, doesn't matter. And I want to do something like which enables, let's say, 100 million Indians to travel easily, right? So maybe at least we know that he's trying to do something in travel industry, right? So this is one guy, obviously might have some data with it, but the gist of this thing, if he walks away out of your room, you think that this guy is trying to do something which will solve problem for 100 million users. But you might have other clarity, right? But the founder is good. So we'll park this story for now. Second guy comes in next day, let's say, and he say, you know what, again, same pedigree, I have traveled across the world, everywhere, and I found that there are some accessories which are important for travel people, and I have already created some accessories, and I get 40% margin. And the next competitor, biggest of the competitor, like even travel bags, etc., they get only 15-16% net EBITDA margins at the bottom line, and I'm getting 40% margin. You might get excited. Okay, at least if not, the first guy had a vision, the second guy has some tangible business in hand. Then he says, let's meet after 20 days, and can you give me data that can you invest, or can you help me put a business plan, or can you help me guide me this kind of. This is the second founder. Let's look at the third story, which is this guy comes and says that, you know what, I can do some technology. I worked in the best of the technology. I worked in Google, Twitter, whatever best of the technology companies, or Tesla, whatever, and I can I can create some kind of vehicle or whatever, and a new way to go to space, right? So possibly this guy now knows what to build, right? So he knows the journey. But what is, if you look at all these three things, right, sometimes all of us feel that these are complete business plans because the guy is coming good, the team is good, possibly his vision is good, the fact that this guy is leaving his 20-year job and doing something like this, it better be good. But, and this is how I think 90% of business plans in new idea world comes to you. They are vague, they are not clear, the path is not clear. But many times what happens is, lot of times they are leaving lot much thing undefined, lot many things undefined. And that's a problem with most of these plans. And I'll tell you where we are headed with this. So what a business plan needs to have, and I think some of you would know from a lending perspective, if I'm going to a bank and sharing my project plan, what a bank needs, CIBIL score, etc., and plus numbers, EBITDA numbers, 3-year filing, 10-year filing, etc. So there is some kind of a story to build. But in case of ideas or the business plans, what is important, you have to be clear on all the three things. And what I mean by that is, where are you headed? What is my vision? Maybe the first guy was very clear, I had a vision. But he was not clear that what I'm going to do tomorrow and what is my journey. Second guy was clear in terms of what he's doing today. I get 40% margin, but he doesn't have answer that am I going to compete with Aristocrat, am I going to compete with Samsonite, am I going to compete with something else. He doesn't know where he's going to head. He just knows today. Third guy knows in between, right? I can build technology which can go, but he doesn't know where I'm today and where I'm going to tomorrow. If money comes, I'll build something. So what is important in business plans from a containment perspective is, and especially if they are coming at an idea stage, and because this session is about startups, etc., is all these three things. Or if somebody comes to you with those three possible ideas, you have to tell him that, boss, you go back and get me all these three things. Where are you headed? Are you doing something today which possibly takes you to that particular journey? And what are the journey milestones which you have? And all these three things in terms of time, in terms of monetizable outputs or inputs, have to be clear in your business plan. So business plan, just to kind of, by the time people are also coming in, I would say, this is your kind of a possible kind of a, I would say, blueprint for a business plan. Many times, and I will tell you right now, every week possibly we get around 20 to 30 new ideas, startup ideas. And believe me, 90% of ideas are actually first slide. Only 10% of ideas in the second slide. Who is clear on all the three things? In terms of number, in terms of, if I ask him like that, you know what, how much money you are going to need? Today you need, let's say, $500,000. But when you want to go there, how much you are going to raise? Possibly he's clear about it. If I ask him, let's say, how many countries you will be in after 2 years, he knows where my journey is. So some of these questions he will answer, and these answers are typically also related to either money going into the business or money coming out of the business, right? And that's why all these things are important to be available in the business plans. So this is just a simple, I would say, outline. Coming to ideas, as I said, we'll talk about ideas also and what is changing in ideas. As I said, if you look at India, right, what happened in India, maybe post maybe 1950, 60, 70, however you want to take from 70 onwards, is India built a lot of basic stuff. Maybe like roti, kapda, makan kind of products where, hey, you don't have housing, I'm going to build housing. If you need food, I'll build food, etc. A lot of Me Too ideas. It's just more like, can somebody want to, is somebody trying to basically set up a business around it, and can he build a business which is profitable, etc. Whereas now, if you look at 2000, maybe 10 onwards, as the, and a lot of those old companies built on infrastructure, physical infrastructure of India, whether it's the phone lines, whether it's highways, whether it's a physical connectivity, etc., or rail connectivity. But 2010 onwards, a lot of these businesses, or a lot of new businesses are built on different rails, which could be digital rails, which could be UPI rails, which could be, let's say, Aadhaar as an ecosystem, not a KYC ecosystem. Even as fundamental as something like that, like most of you, I'm sure that when you opened your first bank account, you were not recognized by a face or a photo. You were recognized because you carry the ration card or a card or a ID, which was possibly even a photo-less, right? So because you carried that paper, you were Amit or you were Rajesh or Mr. Shetty, whatever it is, right? Today that has changed, right? So today possibly, if I lose my mobile phone, possibly somebody will not recognize me as Bhushan, right? So the identities also are changing from paper to something new, the way we are identifying people. And that's where the ideas itself are changing. Now, If I look at most of the new world, right, like maybe 10 to 15 or maybe 20, 25 years, many of the new successful ideas or business or startups or business plans will revolve in some of these buckets. Obviously, I'm not saying these are the only buckets, there are more buckets, but predominantly these are the buckets. So somebody will say, I'm doing innovations. Innovation is basically fundamentally doing something what world was doing in a very different fashion. So the examples I've given, like Paytm QR code. So somebody like Paytm said, you know what, forget these POS machines, cards and all this thing. I'm going to put QR code and let the world change it, right? Obviously, a lot of these ideas also fail because it's not easy for somebody to make a habit changes of people. But there are buckets of ideas which are under innovation, and these ideas sometimes become whoppingly big. What you see today, UPI, what you see like, let's say Paytm, PhonePe, etc., they become fairly large businesses if the ideas work. Apple is a good example. Google is a good example. Yahoo was the biggest company, but Google kind of came later. They just said that I will do a search far better. They said I'll structure information for you far better. So same set of customers, I completely created a new way of accessing the world, right? That's innovation. Second is reimagining, right? So what is reimagining, right? And I think it's the simplest stuff. Like for example, you say loans at POS machines, right? Today when you go to Flipkart, when you buy a machine, the loan can be originated from there. 20 years back, it was not the case. You have to go to a bank, sit to the guy and sit a paper, etc. So the context of loans, or somebody said, forget why would loan have to be given only at the banking counters. Can you reimagine loans in the context of a requirement? So that's where the reimagining ideas come in. Or self-filling taxes, like in your cases also, right? I'm sure that many people, in fact, I used to go and my CA will help me fill the Saral forms and all those kind of things. Today it is all changed, right? Because either sometimes I also can fill the form, or CA can guide me on the phone. You aap bhar lo ghar pe, I'll just guide you kind of thing. So a lot of these things are kind of reimagining the existing world, and there are possibility of creating business and business plans around that. Integrations, right, or integrated models. Basically, just putting everything in one place. A lot of these single window models, what you see, not just startup ideas, but even government is thinking like single BBMP as Bangalore 1, where I can go and not just take care of BBMP related stuff, but also can pay traffic fines and passport related queries, etc. So, and this is what customers want today, right? All these buckets is what are actually very customer centric. Customers want innovations. They want to reimagine certain things. As I said, the consumption of my kid is very different than me right now. Next is verticalization. And this is actually an interesting thing, I think, from your business plan perspective. I'm sure that many of you would come across as somebody says, some of your old clients will come to you saying that business is good, but now I've diversified in 3-4 buckets. I do apparel as well as I do FMCG. I also do restaurants. And they will say, can we create subsidies around it? So businesses need verticalization. Can I separate it out? Same thing what is happening in customer mindset also. Earlier we had small mom and pop shops, kirana shops, etc. People said that, hey, it's too much of minute to kind of go to every shop separately and commercial street, etc. Can I go to one mall where everything is there? So consolidation happens. But the consolidation with, let's say, even Flipkart's, Myntra, let's say, Amazons, that help people. But once consolidation happens, again the wave comes in where people say, oh, fashion is a very different way of buying. So I should have Myntra as a separate site. Hey, cosmetic is very different. The cosmetic buying is very deep. It's not as shallow as, let's say, just search and buy, right? There's a lot more different dynamics to that. That's where the formation of NICA, etc. will come into picture. So that's verticalization. Data and IP led, right? Sometimes, and I think some of the plans which possibly people here might have hard to understand, like somebody says, forget I don't have revenue, everything, but I'm going to build a data. Now, how do you value these businesses, right? But that's getting valued today because somebody's data becomes somebody's, so he may not get money from customer for data, but somebody might buy that data for advertising perspective. I think Truecaller India is a good example. Truecaller was a kind of a, I would say, loss-making entity, but India, they became profitable or nearing profitable because they started leveraging Truecaller's data and sharing or exchanging the data in terms of from a revenue monetization perspective. Data and IP-led businesses also becomes interesting. Replication. Now these are basically again Me Too's kind of thing. Ola will come and say, you know what, I'm Uber of India. Zomato will say, I'm, let's say, Food Panda of India, right? So what happens is there are possibilities of building businesses, ideas, replicating from one place to another place, just kind of localizing that business. Basically, maybe that particular, localizing can be language specific because, and it's a good example. Like I'll tell you, there is a company in Chennai called Oppo Pay. What they said, there's enough of a lot of phone pays, Google pays, Paytms exist, but in Tamil Nadu there is a little bit of a different dynamics of users. So I'll create a localized payment options. So if you go to Chennai or many of the I think Tamil Nadu places, you will see Oppo Pay kind of QR codes, not Paytm or Fancy on Google, despite of they having everything. So actually, world also gives you opportunities to kind of replicate certain things if you catch hold of certain kind of nuance of a customer. So there are few buckets of ideas, and these ideas again will be evaluated very differently when you put in business plans. So the way I'm going to talk about, let's say, if I'm Vijay Shekhar Sharma talking about QR code based payments, it's very differently talked about versus if I'm talking about Ola, I'm building parallel like Uber. So I can take different kind of parallels, and maybe the dynamics, the metrics, the way I measure my business is very Uber-like in India, whereas in QR code it's very, very new, right? So I might create my own metrics from a business plan perspective. Going further, so I think with this, what we have got is a context of ideas, what is changing from ideas point of view, and we also understand what is a business plan should contain, right, from a completeness perspective. But the fact that the topic of today is like robustness of the business plans, I have to still talk about what does a business plan include, right? I think some of these business plan will touch upon the world which you are part of, some will not, but it's important for you to understand. And they, for multiple reasons, right? Like government has a KYC model. I think, I'm sure that your best of the clients, you will know them far beyond your numbers or the filings which you are going to do for them, right? So that's why I think it's important is like if you can understand this, and today I think many CAs are also starting companies. So if you're starting company, everything is making sense for you. If you're not starting, it's more like a KYC for you, for that you know that this dynamic is changing in their life of the customers, right? So I think, let me start. I think there's some basics here. So if you know them, ignore, but I think there are few definitely. I think I'm hoping that some of the things will be new to you. So when you say robustness of a business plan, I think I will define that in terms of, let's say, completeness of the business plan. So even if you are not there, you send a business plan to someone is making sense out of it, right? Second thing is basically, is it covering all those 3-4 dynamics what we talked about earlier? And maybe fourth is basically, if I'm reading a business plan, a lot of times what is important is like, can I take away something out of it, right? So if I'm an investor, I'm reading a business plan, do I talk about my entry and exit strategies? If I put money in this company, will it come out or not? If I'm an employee, if I'm building a business plan, say, oh, this is very interesting. The vision is big, starting is good, possibly this is something for interesting. That's where maybe the entire outcome-led plans are important, that I'm building something interesting, bigger and long-term, so I should join this company. So I think people should get answers for what they're looking for. So there are few, I would say, dynamics of robustness. Talking about few of these points here is, I think problem, solution, time, size are very important. I think problem and solution to some extent we'll touch upon in next couple of slides. But it's very important that what you're solving, not just what you're solving, how do you want to bucketize yourself as? Because many times what happens, people will come to you with lack of knowledge. Because world is very big, many ideas. But somebody who just passed out of college, right, from a chemistry, chemical engineering or some other background and wanted to do something else, his knowledge is limited to what he has seen in the world, right? He will come with a lot of enthusiasm that, you know what, I found the best eureka moment 3 months back and 2 of us are working on it. But when he meets you, will say, no, this is not how. I know 5 of my clients are actually doing something similar. So lack of knowledge becomes very important thing. So if you can put these buckets into this, are you innovating something, or are you just replacing something, are you reimagining something? Because then the lens in which you are going to look at these companies will be very different. Or the way you build their books will be very different, right? So that's why problem and solutions matter, or the bucketizing matter. What generally also missing is the time and size of the businesses, right? So basically, many times people do not have a great idea about, so somebody will say, so I'll say, let's say I'm making let's say fans. Let's say I'm a company want to make new fans, like Atomberg or some new, let's say ABC company comes, I will launch new fans. So, and you say, how many, what is your customer, let's say target address market, it's 1 billion people. But actually fans, people are not going to carry fans in each hand, right? They're in homes. So the data of homes in India is not 1 billion homes. There's only 250 million households. So possibly his market is 250 million houses, not 1 billion people. So it could be as simple as like that. So how do you slice and dice the data and talk about the market and sizing becomes very important. Because if it takes billion as a market, just that one Excel sheet factor takes him like a $100 billion company just making fans. Because you have just put 4x of the total market itself was 4x bigger than what you were thinking, right? So how slicing and dice the market and size and time is very important. Most important thing in your cases, because this session is about startups, and that's why I'm just assuming that you're not going to, in this bucket, you're not going to get some mature 20-year company coming to you. There'll be startups with maybe 1 to 5 year kind of a lifespan. Team becomes very important. So again, may not be important from your perspective, then purely from financial or books, etc. perspective, but it's important that if somebody walks into your, I would say door, even you being from your fraternity, understand your team. I'm sure that you're already doing it, but let's say somebody comes with 20-year background, profitable sales and etc. kind of background, you will give a different kind of a service levels to that particular customer versus some 2-year guy, right? So team becomes very important from all the aspects. And that's where the gaps also come into picture, right? So team can be good team on the books, but they don't have good chemistry in them, right? Team can be good team in chemistry, everything, but maybe they understand certain type of business, but they possibly they don't understand finances. Sometimes they say that we came from, let's say, whatever, let's say AI background and we want to build drones, but they don't have any hardware understanding. So all these gaps also important to kind of understand. Product and service proposition, what they are building, obviously there's a solution. So solution as a line is different, then but what product are going to build is very different. Like somebody says, I'm building a matrimonial kind of a solution. That doesn't mean that he always will have to build a website. He can also build an app, he can also build a book or whatever it could be. So solution or service, what is kind of building and proposition of that solution becomes important. Distribution, go to market. I think many times the go to market piece is missing because like especially the second type of founder, I'm selling travel accessories, I have a 40% margin. But he doesn't know how to get another next set of customers and what beyond that. And that's where the go-to-market comes into picture. Distribution channels comes into picture because, for example, many companies today are building brands on Amazon, Flipkart, etc. But the truth there is most of the Amazon, Flipkart's brands will have hard time to get, so they have typically like harder time to get beyond 10 lakh. Then they have far more harder time to get beyond 50. And they will typically plateau at 2 to 5 crore kind of a number. You will out of thousands of brands, you will only find maybe 10 or 15 brands possibly making more than 5 crore a month on Amazon platform. If they're making 5 crore, possibly they're already doing offline businesses. So some of the offline business structures, etc., from distribution perspective are very important. Why I'm saying this? If somebody says I'm going to get a 100 crore business, I want a business plan 100 crore, and if it's FMCG brand, you should say now, but what is after 60 crore online, what is a 40 crore going to come from? And if you don't know that dynamics of the offline, then who is going to take care of it? And maybe the money required for that is very different. That's where collections, collectibles, etc. start coming into picture, which possibly some of you will also understand that some brand was doing very good in terms of books earlier, but now they are loss making because somebody in their team does not understand offline distribution. Investment and outcomes. Another thing is important here is how much investment you need, clarity on that, and what is the outcome out of it. Right? Lot of companies actually came in last maybe 15, 20 years you would have seen, they are just cash guzzling companies. They know what money they need, but they are not clear about outcomes, right? But today I think maybe last 3-4 years taught to the world that people have to have outcomes. And in fact, if you look at also investor world also is talking about profitabilities, etc. Maybe some of your clients are also coming to you saying that are there any financial engineering ways to create or showcase profits, etc. So outcomes become very, very important. Levers. This I'll talk a little bit more in terms of the business model because this touches upon how you are going to lay out your business plan because this is where you create a moat to kind of win the market. And typically it is not time. It's something very different. Earlier business have a time. If I keep doing this for 20 years, every year 20% growth, I'll get there. Today it is very different. The levers to kind of build businesses are very different, and each of these levers has people, cost, money, time, etc. factor, and that's why they go back into business plan and they'll sit on as a either a capex, opex, or certain kind of heads in some of the data which you're managing today. Capital plan. I think that's very, very important, and especially new age kind of companies. While they know maybe I would say the P&L, they might they might understand the MIS part, but MIS is not P&L. P&L is not, I would say, balance sheets. Balance sheet is not like how do you visualize your collectibles, etc. So this capital plan has to be very, very clear from a business perspective, and there are different capital plans. That clarity has to be there, and a lot of this, I think, is directly related to the way you work with your customers. And I've seen like people moving from one CA to another CA just because on the same capital plan, the other guy can do better job, and also more services. Let's say I said ESOP planning, etc. Entry and exits. So it's important that if you are a founder or you're putting a business plan, obviously your investors or your kind of stakeholders have to come and go and have some possible good exits, but you as a founder also needs to exit some point of time, because you are a perishable entity event of the day. Right? Person is a perishable entity, right? When he starts a business, obviously he's going to have end of life, either because of death or demise, or he will just lose interest. So what is his entry and exit plans in terms of business modeling? And challenges and unknowns. Sometimes this also is important, that the founder needs to be very clear, what are your challenges and what are my unknowns, right? This becomes very, very important. So these are few important, I would say, points from a robust, you should be possibly asking this question if somebody comes to your door. You will say, possibly talking about only the capital plans, etc. But do talk about them about other factors also. Now, we talked about business plan, what it contains, what are ideas, and what is basically the journey part, etc. But today the business plans are also presented in a different fashion. They're not presented always as Excel sheets, right? Many of the people actually made Excel sheets before. Today they don't make Excel sheets. And it's also important, so basically if you look at even the world, right? World is getting very kind of shrink wrap in a smaller bits and sachetized format, right? Like you don't talk to somebody saying that, hey, which TV I want to buy, and then you go to a shop, and then you do some pricing, go to a loan, everything happening at one place. So same thing is happening in business plans also. So there's a there's not much of a difference now, basically the way how I'm going to do my business, how my customers are understanding, how am I going to create a brand, what are my numbers looking like, what are my exit looking like, etc. So it's a complete story as a package coming to you. Right? So what is important right now is storytelling. So this is becoming a very important factor and in fact, I would actually go back and reverse it to you also. For example, if somebody meets you, right? If let's say if I'm a client, I've come to you, right? And say I'm starting, let's say the same travel business, what all you can help, right? Now you can just say I can do audit, I can do filing, etc. And then we have a lesser chance of winning me as a client. So you have to tell a story. Hey, I am doing this business for 20 years, my customers have this problem, I know you need this solution, but you know what, these are the 5 problems which you'll also hear later, etc. So you're trying to package a story. And same thing happens in business plans. So one fundamental thing happening in ideation today is, given the time is short, right? Earlier, let's say somebody built a mixer, fan, etc., like Crompton and some of these companies, they took 6-7 months to build a product, maybe another 10 years to kind of get the mold out, another 5 years, 7 years to kind of take it to market. And we also used as a product, like a fridge at my parents' home will be is maybe 20-year-old fridge, right? But my home possibly, and my kids' home will be only maybe 2 years, 3 years kind of. Life cycles are getting shorter, so that everything what you saw in a Crompton for 20, 30 years, it's getting squeezed. And same thing happening in business plans also. So storytelling becomes important, or understanding of a story is very, very important. And stories sell faster. Nobody came to you and give you training on how to use WhatsApp. We just got it. Right? And somebody so people started creating stories around it, right? Or the founder created stories around it. So what is important is the storytelling is important, right? And this is nothing, it's not actually a physical storytelling to like kids, but your consumer story. Why should a consumer use my product? What are the benefits for him? My journey, right? Sometimes, and Indigo is a good example, right? So they say, their motive, Indigo Airlines is, right? They say on time, every time. Now, that's their promise, right? I'll try to be on time every time. To an extent that they told you to clean your trash. Saying that for that promise, even customers now are happily cleaning their trash. Go to other Kingfisher airline that time, you will just sit like this and let somebody clean, right? So because of that promise, you even got a customers participate. So in the journey, if in journey your customer also participate, that possibly is a good factor or good outcome, it's almost like the brand ethos going to the customers. Outcomes definitely important, that this customer should find out, okay, if I'm using this soap or if I'm doing this particular WhatsApp, etc., my outcomes my gratifications are very quick, right? Impact and mode, right? That's another important thing. What is the impact of the business from a story perspective? And key insights. So most of these ideas start with some insights which normal person do not see. So nobody was doing QR code payment before, but they just figured out, okay, there's a problem in India for most of the guys because they don't have internet, they don't have electricity, nothing. They cannot even put a POS machine. So can I replace it something with some new innovation? So insights become very important. And insight can be as simple as, let's say, there was no place to write 160 character message beyond SMS, so Twitter get formed. There was no place to put a video of whatever simple at my home. That's why YouTube got formed. So what are these small things actually give rise to larger innovations? So insight becomes the driver of most of the business plans. And in fact, most of the investors actually, we talk about what is your insight? Why are you building this thing, right? What was the problem? Because sometimes the founders say, I had this, as my family had of this problem, and I struggled and I want to solve this particular thing. So why you are looking at this thing? So some of these insights are basically specific to certain markets. Let's say Uber, somebody in Ola felt that, okay, Uber is working good. Can I bring Uber in India? Some specific market-related insight. Customer trade nuance, let's say certain trade-related nuances, okay, this filing or a export-related documentation is always a pain. Can I just create a template for it and create something out of it? So those kind of things. It could be data gap. It could be a gap of business itself, like this particular thing is not solved in India or globally in the world. Some of these are important insights. And then if you replicate that, saying that this problem or insight is replicated to billion people or 100 million users, etc., they give rise to larger business plans or larger outcomes, which you will also be happy to manage over a period of time. Some examples of key insight is basically perfumes are always there, but fog is a good example. I'm sure that everybody will know. Kya chal raha hai, fog chal raha hai kind of advertise. The insight was very simple. Like, can I somehow replace all these things which was aerosol based, right? A gas based kind of perfumes with a liquid based perfume, right? And then try to market hell out of it and create a kind of a large brand out of it. So perfume, this industry otherwise was already like a matured industry, right? Same thing, protein bars. Today I'm sure that some of your kids or maybe you also will be eating some protein bars, protein supplements, etc. Never existed 20 years back. But somebody said that people are not getting enough protein in their meals today. Like for like your parents or grandmothers, grandfathers, etc. So somebody said, let's launch protein bars. And that becomes a driver for you to kind of build larger business out of it. To an extent that ITCs, etc. will buy them for hundreds of crores and hundreds of crores of monies, right? So these becomes very important. Most of these ideas, what I told you earlier, or the idea buckets will start with certain insights. They will be as simple as it could be something like what is not in your pocket, etc. And just putting that one small bit and it changes the dynamics of the business. If not, they become big business, they become a ground mothership for you to build larger business over a period of time. Let's say telecom itself is not a big business, but on telecom you have data, kind of other OTTs, etc. They actually have far more revenue making business than telecom itself, right? So those are important things. So these are effective business plans always will have good story, great story behind it, or they will have certain insights behind it. So that's another way to validate whether this business plan is great or not, right? What are the business levers? So as I told about, we'll talk about levers. You as a team, you have a great business plan, everything is fine, but if I look at this entire thing from an outside view, right? If somebody tells me that I already built this company, and if you are sitting not today, but end of the, let's say after 3, 4, 5 years, when you look back, imagine you are going there, fast forwarding yourself in time and then looking at this business, do you see any levers? Like, do you see these people have right to build? Right to build in the sense, like this is in our investment fraternity, we call it as founder market fit. Is this founder good or a right person to build his business? That is important thing, right? So, so that's basically, do you have a right to build for this space, right? And do you have enough kind of, I would say, bells and whistles around you to kind of support you on doing that? Right to win, right? Okay, you can build, yeah, it's fine. You came from drone company, you're building another drone company, but will you be the leader or not? So what is your right to win? Why will you win? Is it some IP or data protection, whatever something you have in your hand or family background that gives you right to win in this space and right to own the space? So the last is basically right to own. That's in the sense, if I'm doing this, I won't fall down as a company. See, a lot of companies, they scale, and some of the Nokia, etc., are good examples. They scaled, but they somehow couldn't own the space. They were winning, but somehow they were not owning the space. Somebody came and started owning the space. So this also becomes important. What is your kind of are you building enough levers for you to own that space for a longer point of view, right? Longer time, right? So those are few important things we have to look at from business plan perspective. Yeah, you being a team, you across the journey, and the outcome which you are going to come out, will you be the only contender for that space, right? Owning that space. Now, as I said, levers always was bottom line earlier, profitability, time. If I keep doing this for 20 years, kuch na kuch ho jayega, bottom line se business ban jayega, paisa to banega dhire dhire. That philosophy is changing to some extent. So what are the new levers right now? Team is a great lever. So you could say, you know what, I'm going to build drone, but you know what, my distribution is going to happen through this guy who worked 20 years in Boeing. So maybe you have some value for this guy as a team, right? First mover advantage, because nobody's solving this problem. Ola, so when Ola came in, if there was other company wanted to do something similar, there was no benefit Ola had. It's just a first mover advantage when they started Uber in India to some extent, right? Technology advantage, right? Somebody will say I have a technology. Data becomes important thing because that they call it data as a new oil. So if you can create humongous amount of data, everybody will be interested in most of your companies, right? IP, right? Do you have any IP kind of built up in your business which gives you right to win or right to stay longer? Brand becomes important moat. While doing after maybe 5-6 years of this, will you be able to create a brand so that and they say right to own is actually with a brand. If Nokia would have launched Android phone, possibly Nokia had a better chance of launching Android phone. But it just took so much of time launching Android phone. Somebody else launched Android phone who was not possibly in the phone industry that time, right? Something like that. So do you have a brand kind of a creation, and that brand gives you a moat to win the market? Partnerships, like you would see sometimes, I'm doing some things, etc. But you know what? I'm a fintech company and I already have a cracker partnership with ICAI Bank. Possibly largest bank to kind of strategically say that, okay, this guy can win far. He has a right to build and win possibly the market because of ICICI Bank kind of a backing, right? Legacy could be a family background. I'm doing this FMG for 20 years. I'm from Tirupur, managing apparel, Jalandhar managing, let's say, blankets, etc. So I understand the every nook and corner of that business, understanding the DNA of the business. So maybe that comes handy for you. Knowledge definitely is one thing. You possibly come with knowledge, operational expertise, supply demand. While I'm doing a 30% margin business today, at scale, I have the levers to make 5% more margin from supply, or I can have a better control of demand. Loyalty is becoming another important thing. Am I creating a loyalty program? And that's why Amazon runs a loyalty program is mainly because to keep you connected with the brand all the time. So you are happy or you flaunt about that, hey, mere paas Jet Airways ka jet privilege hai, or I have a Cathay Pacific gold member and those kind of things, right? So loyalty becomes another way to connect the brand to an extent that when you're not even operating that particular product, you're thinking about that particular product because maybe in your pocket there is a card or you're talking about it, etc. So some of these becoming a new levers of building businesses. And all of these actually businesses come at a cost. And if they come at a cost, they will come in your Excel sheets, right? So that's your connecting back with all these levers, right? Obviously, business needs time, money, and people. So business plan should have very great clarity in terms of what's the time needed to kind of build a business, and have a clarity in terms of time. At maturity, if somebody asks a question, okay, you are a 5 crore business today, when will be 100 crore? If not 100 crore, so if maybe your business itself is not possible, you cannot create 100 crore business, maybe only 50 crore business, you should have a clarity in terms of what kind of time and money requirements or money outputs I can drive, right? Money, obviously, I think you will understand far more. But what is becoming important is the money requirements are very different or as a journey, through the journey of a business. People, obviously, that's a cost center anyway, but it's important that you understand what are the gaps, what you're going to fill with the different skills, etc. Those are your possibly costed, these are your input to businesses. And I'll talk about the business outcomes. So outcomes, this is basically customers, right? Mostly it will be customers. So it's about, and not just customers in terms of numbers, but it could be numbers in rupee value, dollar value, ARPUs and those kind of things, but also demographic of the customers. Today, if you say I have a 50 million customer, but if I ask you the question, what is the average age of the customer? If you say 65, possibly I might not be investing in your business, right? Unless you say I'm doing something for elderly only, right? So, but if somebody says I have a 5 million customer and my average is 27 years of my customers, then possibly the interesting is very important because at least there is a 20-year window for this customer to be with your brand. right? So demographics of customer is becoming far more important. Loyalty, obviously, we talked about a bit, but are these customers loyal? Are they coming back and buying the things again and again from you? Market footprint. This is about your ownership. Are you creating enough footprint in the market that you cannot be toppled very easily? That's important. Segment ownership. So you may not own the entire India, but are you the best company managing that particular segment, right? Very, very specific thing, right? Or geography, certain geographies, etc. Value. Value, I think value is very different than the monetizable value. And value creation is very different today because many times the value, or if you look at even the stock market, etc. And now if you look at new IPOs, the value outcomes are not only the profits and bottom lines, they will also say brand value, right? A brand goodwill. And there are hundreds of crores rupees of laid out there, right? So what is obviously the first point is dollar value, but the impact, the brand, your competitiveness of that thing, right? So that drives the value of a business. So you might not be the greatly profitable company today, but if you say, when it comes to, let's say, healthy products, and the name, 90% of users are going to talk about Mamaearth products, then Mamaearth has a lot more value than if you look at this from bottom line perspective. Not that I'm saying that that's the best company or not, but I'm just saying that you have done enough so that your market is aware about your product, right? Something like that. Patanjali is doing a good job on a brand side. While you may not know which product I'm using, but somehow you still know that as a brand. Even if you are not a user, you may still buy a stock of that particular company, right? So some of that brand value also comes an important thing, and that's an outcome of a business. Last but not least, I just talk about market ownership, right? Doing all these things, how much market you own? Are you creating a brand which is self-sustaining? And market directives. Market directives and more become very important today. So, and that going back to this earlier slide, what I said, the last part is basically right to kind of own, right? Right to kind of own the space is market directives. Are you the person? So if you have certain product or a certain, let's say if you're Patanjali, it's almost like you have a right to launch next yoga product. You have a right to launch any healthy product because my brand, people understand. If I launch something that will by default possibly organic, etc. Or let's say there are new companies now, new brands coming into picture. So now I'm not just talking about what I'm doing and as a business, but even if I've launched tomorrow, people will get it that as a healthy product or a best safe airline travel, etc. So what are my brand directives or market directives which I'm setting up as a business? So they give you right to even own something which you are not seen today. Even tomorrow something AI, etc. come, even if it's AI-based healthcare will be owned by that particular company, something like that. So that's a kind of, I would just, that's what I'll end. Happy to take more questions. Hopefully it was, you could grasp things. Happy to share the presentation later with the management so you can take it. But happy to take more questions. We have 10 minutes, 5 minutes, I think. Right. Yeah. Yeah, so I think, and this is a very good question. I'll take from the fact that, so and let me give you an analogy of loans, right? So when I go to a bank and now I'll prepare all the documentation. Right? One way to go to bank is saying that I need a loan, right? Basically, that's where I don't care about how bank evaluates me, right? But today, what happens is most of the people know, right? The bank is going to ask a salary slip. So bank knows, so I know like bank is asking me affordability of that particular loan. So same thing here. So what is happening today is if people are coming to investors to kind of win that investor or even win you as a client, for example, I would have to understand if I put myself in your shoes, you would look for exits. And I'll tell you why this becomes very important. Is if businesses typically, at least as a thought process, idea, every business thinks that I'm going to be 20 or 100 year long businesses, right? But actually most of our life cycles as a partner, whether it's CA, whether it's investor, whether it's a bank, is shorter in their time frames. So when you, and I'll call this from our investment terms, like for example, angel investors come in early stage, they exit, they don't wait till the IPO. Seed investors come in seed to Series A, B, Series B invest, and their dynamics of the money is very different. Their outcomes. So what I'm saying that if you know that customer anyway, better to prepare. That okay, you are an angel investor, I know you need 5x exit, and I can give you within 5 years of time, and at least this is my journey, so that you will get that 5x exit. Because it will be very shallow to go with the plan saying that you want 5x exit, but my business is only growing 2x in 2 years. Now you will say, I don't see in business plan, I'll go 5x exit. So I think that's where that exit visibility is very important. Yeah. If somebody give a mic. Anyway, you can say, I think we are near.
There's one slide where we talked about CBDC on the idea slide, right?
Okay.
So does CBDC fit into, I mean, any of your investment thesis, or how does it, how do you see the application of CBDC, especially in the Indian context? I'm not looking at retail payments, but mostly on the wholesale side. This is where there's a lot of action happening globally. But from your vantage point, what kind of ideas do you see where CBDC usage is relevant?
Okay. And I'm just understanding if you are looking from investor perspective or a general market perspective or just ideas.
Any startup which is trying to build in this space using digital rupee, right? Because even there's a mandate from the RBI to expand on the use cases, right?
Exactly.
So from both from an investor standpoint as well as from a startup standpoint, if someone wants to build on in this particular space, what would be your advice?
See, right now, I'll tell you, maybe I'll tell you both, give both the perspective. Let me talk about investor perspective first. See, investors actually are looking CBDC from a infra point of view, right? Because there are two parts. CBDC as an infrastructure component, there is a distribution component, usage and distribution. Now we know in India, in distribution takes $2-3 billion, right? UPI would not be successful if PhonePe would not spend, let's say, billions of dollars behind distributing that, right? Because we had a e-rupee problem, but nobody took e-rupee and put $1 billion behind it to distribute. So that's why maybe it's stuck somewhere. But UPI worked because somebody like PhonePe and maybe Paytm later, etc., who joined the wagon, or Google Pay, they spent billions of dollars making it to go to people. So CBDC again has two buckets: distribution bucket or usage bucket, use case scenario bucket, which we as investors, at least early stage, we feel that it is a very costly bucket right now, because we don't want to fund the market where the ROI is very, very minuscule, because end of the day is money moving. When I give 1 rupee, I cannot sell 1 rupee to you at 2 rupees, right? So there's no margin on money. That's why the arbitrage on money to money is always going to few bips, not like 5%, 6%. So CBDC has a challenge of maybe that challenge possibly investors are not looking into build. I'll talk about idea point of it, I'll come to that. Second is, that's why the second bucket became infra. Infra is nothing but, for example, if somebody can create a small CBDC, let's say, validator, let's say. CBDC is a purpose-driven instrument, right? If I give you 10 rupees and say 10 rupees has to be given to Mr. Mohan, that has to only give to Mr. Mohan. It's a purpose-driven instrument, right? Now in this case, on that purpose, if I have to get validated also credit score of Mr. Mohan, I give that as a hook, and I'll charge you, let's say, some money. That is always a toll. That's like a toll business, right? They always make money. And I don't need to distribute that thing. Somebody else is distributing. So infra is becoming an interesting play where I don't need to distribute. So there's no distribution cost. In the pipe, things will anyway move. CDBC has to be successful. Every on a successful highway pe toll lagana is far better rather than building highways, right? Because at least if I sit for one place, somebody comes and gives me money, right? So those are businesses, very investor-friendly businesses today, right? As I would call as infra businesses or enhancement businesses, catalyst businesses, etc., who can move faster. From an idea perspective, I think 3-4 buckets I feel, right? One is the usage part. I think usage in CDBC might be driven from a fact that I think B2B is a good example, wholesale, and that's why I think government has started B2B, because when I give you advances, right? Now let's say you are doing 3-4 businesses, maybe I myself have 5 orders with you, but now the other 2 orders I have not paid. The only 3rd order I want to pay because it's a very time sensitive, so I'll give advance. I want to reconcile order only for the 3rd order on that GST. So which I now can do. So what I think there are deposit, advances, specific purposes. So I think there are enough nuances which can be solved in Indian nuances. So India has its own kind of peculiar problems, right? When you give money to someone in a B2B fashion, it may not be the full money, it may be on advance, it may be not for the first order. You will say last year ka settle kar lo, lekin isme se tum GST uska kaat lo. So there are a lot of these purposes we actually say, but eventually that doesn't get recalled. Well, nahi, wo to maine galat se kar diya wahan pe. Now that will not happen. So I think there is usage-based ideation possible there. So let's say in your group right now, if I have to say, the purpose can be created, and which works very well in B2B context. It also works very beautifully in a, let's say, real estate context, right? I'm giving you my deposit money for this particular project. उसको वहाँ पर they don't take it to other project. So there are purpose-driven many use cases in India, which possibly also will thrive because of CDBC. So those are use cases, right? Now, maybe my guess is those use cases will be funded by investors after seeing some traction. Infra is getting funded today itself.
Thank you. Just to add to your point, so a couple of investors like Matrix and Bloom, they're already very much aggressive in this particular space.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think everybody is looking at the thing because they have seen success of UPI.
Yeah.
ONDC is coming up new. So I think there are enough, I think, and that's the beauty of India today. We get all the opportunities, right? Not just infra, working on a government rails on top of it, or use case. Use cases are becoming a little bit of a daunting because the habit of lack of words, I would say, Indian consumers is anything new they get, they want discounts, which are higher than the margin of a business. So if you have a business or a plan or idea, which actually say them, I have a customer, my cost of doing business is little higher than a margin of my business, lower than the margin of my business, then it's possibly viable. In pure place currency businesses, right? That's a separate topic I should be talking, but when commodity is money, your margins are far lesser. And that's becoming a challenge for most of the fintechs in India today. But if you can manage within that, banks are already doing it, NBFCs are managing. Fintechs as a tech world is finding it challenging because the cost of running the business is far higher. So I think, but opportunities definitely exist.
Thank you.
Any other question? Maybe one question we can take possibly. Okay, that's it, right? Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks for attending.
Members, I remember reading a newspaper article that if we have an idea which is workable and before we start that, hire the required human resources and train them to work as per your guidance and for that particular organization. How the present, the path you travel and future of a business idea burns or earns money and time required and many more things were learned just now. That experience of 2.5 decade in Indian and overseas market and worked as president of a unicorn and an online market giant has kept us eager to know. A big round of applause for that 1.5 hours fantastic session. On behalf of members present here and all the managing committee members of Bangalore branch, I would like to hand over a memento as a token of gratitude and respect. Can I request CA Dhawan ji to come out to dais and then do the honors?